Welcome back to A Better Choice Homestead, where on my channel I focus on food, growing it, preparing it, and preserving it. Today's freezing outside. It's the early afternoon and I spent the morning out running errands and it is in the 20s, it is snowing, it is absolutely frigid outside and I really want to warm up. So today I am going to be making a slow on the stove hearty soup, and that's going to allow me the opportunity to use a lot of the ingredients that I have in my freezers and in my pantry. I'm gonna be winging this, but I think it's gonna come out phenomenal. This is going to be a kale, sausage, and bean soup. I am going to be using some home canned cannellini beans from my pantry. I'm going to be using some freeze-dried kale from my pantry. I'm going to be using the pork broth I recently freeze-dried after making the tamales. This is a phenomenal broth, so that's what I'm going to be using as the stock for this. I've pulled out a couple packages of sausage from my freezer. So this is a smoked sausage, and then this is the raw ground bulk sausage. I went ahead and defrosted 2 of the ham hocks from my freezer. And then I also have some potatoes left over from my, I think, December Azure standard order. So we are going to be making really good use of these ingredients and working through what we have prepared and stored. First thing I need to do is I need to turn this pot of water. If you did watch the freeze dry video I did on this pork broth, it was 15 cups. So 3 medium freeze dryer trays full of this broth. That's what we're going to be doing in here. I'm going to go ahead and get this water turned on, and then we're going to add this and turn that back into a stock. Here is the freeze dried pork broth, and I'm just going to add that in. I kind of hate to be using it all for one application, but I do plan on freeze drying this end result because this is going to be a large double batch. We're just going to get that mixed in, and can you see how quick that was? That just turned right into an amazing broth again. It smells phenomenal already. To that, I'm going to add 2 ham hocks. And I'm going to add 2 quarts of the cannellini beans. One. And 2. Now I'm going to bring this up to a boil, and then I'm going to simmer this for about an hour. And the reason for the boil and then the simmer, because the beans are already cooked. Now, of course, the pork hocks are not, but because they have a little bit of fat and they have bone in them, there's a lot of impurities in there that we want to get rid of. Bringing this to a boil and then simmering it for an hour is going to allow all of that to rise to the surface. I call it scum. There's going to be a lot of scum on the top of this, or there probably will be, that I'm going to want to scoop off before we add any additional ingredients to this. So I'm just going to bring this to a boil, and then we're simmering for 1 hour. I'll show you what that looks like when it comes to a boil and I turn the heat down. That's probably going to take 20 minutes to get this to a rolling boil because there is so much liquid in this pot. We haven't quite come up to a boil yet, but I wanted to show you just how much foam or scum there is on the top of this already. I'm going to take some of that off. And I'm just going to keep doing that as this goes along the boil and then the simmer process. I want the broth clean. We don't want to eat that. That is all from the pork hocks that we put in here, from the bones, from the meat juices. We just want to get as much of that off as possible. So I'll do this whenever I see it kind of building up over the next 1 hour as this comes to a boil and then simmers. Now this is probably a 4 to 5 hour total cook time. which is a little bit of an investment in time, but this is the weekend. It is really cold outside, and having something just so hearty and warm sounds amazing right now. And I'm gonna be able to get a whole bunch done in between babysitting this. We're almost at a boil. It's probably gonna be another 5 minutes before this is rolling, and we'll turn the temperature down to simmer. As you can see, even through the top here, we're at a really good boil. I'm gonna turn that heat down to simmer or low so it can simmer. And we're gonna let that go for a full hour. I'm not gonna try to skim anything off right now because I can't see it's boiling too much. Once it calms down, I'll resume the skimming. Oh. It already smells amazing because of the original stock that I put in here. I'm telling you, that was phenomenal. 1 hour. Here we are at the 1 hour simmer mark. I did not have to pull anything else off the top. This is looking really clear. I'll show you what we did pull off. That's pretty icky looking, which is why we do pull that scum off whenever we're boiling bones and fat and meat. So we are ready to move on to the next step with this, which is just to add the sausage. You can use whatever kind of sausage that you like. The recipe that I was inspired by was in an Anthony Bourdain book, and he uses a couple different kinds of Portuguese sausage. I don't have that. If I did, I would use it, but I am trying to use up what I currently have and not buy more. So I'm working through my freezer and my pantry. So I just have a smoked sausage here that I'm going to cut up into bite-sized pieces. And how I do that when we have this horseshoe is I cut off one of the legs so it's straight, and then another one. And then those two I can cut down the long way and then just cut into some bite-sized pieces. And I will do that with all 3 segments of this. And because I only had one of these types of sausages in my freezer, I'm adding the bulk sausage as well. If you have more of this type of smoked sausage, feel free to use that. I'm going to cut some of these pieces down just a little bit smaller. Overall, looks good. This is going to be delicious. It smells absolutely incredible. The broth looks super clear. I'm very pleased with that. A lot of protein in here, and we're going to be adding that kale as well and some potatoes. This is going to be absolutely delicious. So I'm just going to scoop this sausage into the pot carefully. Because this is a double batch, if you have more of that sausage on hand, you can do 3 or 4 of those packages. I only had the one, and I'm only going to be using 1 package of this ground sausage as well. And this is raw. It's going to cook inside the pot here, but I am going to kind of break it up as I put it in. So I don't want it in one big clump. And I could have pre-cooked this just to get it kind of caramelized on the outside, deepen the flavor, but I think that this is going to be fine. I couldn't really tell from the label. It had kind of worn off, the words did, but I see a lot of spices in here. So this might be a spicy sausage, which if it is, I'll be happy about that. And this looks to be about 1.5 pounds. gonna get the lid back on that and we're gonna let that go for 1 more hour. Next step is to add some potatoes as well as some spices. I'm using these very, very small potatoes here, yellow potatoes. I think I cut up about 14 of them, so that makes 16 in all. And I'm just gonna make these bite sizes. So I'm cutting down twice from one angle and then flipping it over and cutting once down the middle and then 3 or so times down the other way. That gets that into just a nice bite-sized piece. So we've got a nice bit of potato here. And the other thing that we are going to add right now is a little splash of vinegar. I am going to use some white wine vinegar. I'm going to get that mixed up a little bit. Not much, just maybe a tablespoon. Just going to add a little bit of brightness to the stock. And then you get to add the spices that you like. So I'm gonna throw in some red pepper flakes. Big surprise. That was not quite a tablespoon. And then some salt and pepper. Now this doesn't have any salt or pepper added to it yet, although the stock that I used was seasoned, so I'm not gonna add too much. I'll taste it and we'll see and go from there. I'm just gonna get that mixed around. This looks really good. I'm gonna give that just a small taste. Just for the sake of spices. That is delicious. I'm gonna add a little more salt and pepper, but that is delicious. I can taste the sausage in there, even though I just tasted the broth. It has a really nice savory flavor to it. And now we're just gonna get those potatoes added. I'm trying not to splash myself. Talk about a hearty pot of delicious soup. Now the potatoes need to cook, so we're gonna give those about an hour. You can see that the sausage has cooked up nicely. Everything in here is gonna be fabulous. So delicious. So we're gonna give it an hour, and then I'm gonna add the kale. At any point after you add the kale, whether it's freeze-dried, frozen, or fresh, it's going to cook really quick. So you wanna add that towards the end. The longer you let this simmer, the deeper the flavor is going to be, the better it's going to be. We're gonna give it just 1 more hour, I think, because we've got some hungry people. It's almost 5 o'clock here, but you can let this go for a few more hours if you had the time and the inclination to do so. I'm gonna give it 1 more. We'll come back, we'll add the kale, and then we'll get it plated up. Our soup is just about done. We have just 2 minor things left to do. We need to add the kale, and that is only gonna take 2 minutes to fully rehydrate. This was blanched before it was freeze-dried, so it doesn't actually need to cook, but we do need to get out the ham hocks. You can choose to toss them if you'd like, or you can choose to use the meat that's on them. It's gonna be very, very tender at this point. I'm actually going to use it. So I'm just gonna separate it from the bone. I wanna make sure that I'm not getting that connective tissue or the fat. So just being selective on what I am pulling towards me for use. and then just dicing that down. It's pretty hot, so you're gonna wanna be careful. It literally just falls apart even by touching it. Smells delicious. And then we're just gonna get that loaded back into the pot. Looks like this one has already fallen apart. There's just a bone. So we're good to go. I'm gonna add the freeze-dried kale. Now, if you have fresh or frozen, you can use that too. You're just gonna need a couple extra minutes in the hot broth. And I'm gonna pour this into a bowl first. I don't wanna pour it over the hot steamy soup because that will create humidity in the jar and it could start to rehydrate the kale. So we don't want that. And you can use as much or as little as you'd like. I am looking for a super hearty, nutritious food. So we're gonna add, I would say that's probably 2 cups. And just gonna get that stirred around. Got a lot of sausage, the potatoes, that amazing broth, the cannellini beans. This is gonna be so delicious and warm us right up. That's good to go, we're ready to serve. I am ready to try this. It smells amazing, it looks fantastic. And there was really no effort. There was time involved, but it wasn't active time spent over the stove. This is a very simple, nutritious and delicious meal, especially on a cold winter's night. Let's give that a try. You can see all of the different ingredients in here. It smells absolutely incredible. I can't wait to give this a try. I am so glad that we had that repurposed, sensational broth to use. And when I made the tamales, that's one of the reasons I didn't use the Instant Pot to cook the meat, because I wanted to get a lot of broth from that. Mission accomplished. Let's give this a taste. I'm gonna retaste that broth. It's hot. That is incredible. It has a thick feel in your mouth. The flavor combination with the beans and the sausage is phenomenal. This is exactly what I was hoping for on a cold day like today. Let's try some sausage and some kale. Yeah, absolutely delicious. And a potato. Let's see if those potatoes are cooked through. They should be. They were small dices with an hour cook. They are definitely soft, but not mushy. This is fantastic. I can put a recipe card right here for you in case you're interested in trying this. It is amazing. You could probably even top it with just a little bit of Parmesan cheese. I think that would probably go well, but otherwise the spices, everything married beautifully together, everything complements everything. It's perfect. Thank you so much for joining me for another edition of Tasty Tuesday, a hearty kale, sausage, and bean soup. My name is Kelly, you're at A Better Choice Homestead, and I do hope you come back and visit again soon.